Yeah, I didn't really invest in it until like the last like 5 years is when I really started to invest in my art and understand that this has potential to be a career, and most people can do it as well.
Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and this week I'm talking to Donna Adi, who is walking us through how to add illustration to an image. She does the coolest illustrations, and I can't wait for you to see them and also see her lesson. So let's jump right in.
Donna, welcome to the show.
Hi.
It's so nice to actually meet you. I feel like we've been chatting online for a while, and now like face to face is, I mean, you know what? Zoom calls are the new in real life. So this is basically like we're meeting in real life.
That's true. And day and age is our real life.
Mm-hmm. It's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
So I am really excited to have you on the show because I feel like what you do is so vastly different than most of the people that I have on the show. And as soon as I saw your work, I was like, oh my God, yes, I need to have her on here to talk about what she does. So I want to get into that and explain to people a little bit more about what you do. But I feel like before we talk about that kind of stuff, I think you should just introduce who you are, what you do, how you got into this, and all that stuff.
Well, thank you, first of all. I also love what you do, and I'm very impressed. I'm sure you get it all the time, but your work is amazing. I'm Donna, and my style of art is basically mixing reality with illustration. And today I worked for brands like Puma, Nike, Dior, Michael Kors, and in addition, I have been flown out to do talks with different brands and, teach workshops. So it's very fun. During this, Corona situation, it's also been interesting to see how it's evolving. Now I'm doing like a lot of projects for like, motivating people or, highlighting heroes during this time period. So in a nutshell, that's kind of like what I do. Yeah.
So do you do this full time?
Yeah, it's my full-time job.
And I know you said your background is in fashion and advertising. So does that mean that you don't have a background in art? Like, how did you learn how to do this?
So I have like just a background in art, and I mean that by saying like it was always my hobby. I was, in high school and in college, I was always taking classes on the side. It was never my main focus. It was just something I was always good at and something I genuinely adored. But, growing up, I think I'm assuming we grew up around the same time, going to high school and college. It was before the whole like Instagram and, getting noticed online was a lot harder. So I didn't really see the potential of how I could turn this into a career. So I kept it as a hobby. And, I worked in the fashion space for 10 years doing branding and PR and marketing. And I eventually, quit that to pursue my dream as an artist. And, yeah, I didn't really invest in it until like the last like 5 years is when I really started to invest in my art and understand that this has potential to be a career, and most people can do it as well.
I love hearing that because it sounds so similar to the way that I turned this into a job too. And I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of journey with it. But I think it's also so interesting that you said that you were one of the first people who was doing this kind of art, because in my head I'm like, well, she's the only person doing this kind of art. Like, because I just don't know, like I just had never seen that before. And I think it's so refreshing to talk to people where that happens, because I think in any art industry you feel like everybody is doing what you're doing, and it can be really challenging for people. Like, this is a whole different topic, but I think a lot of people are like, well, why should I pursue this? There's so many other people doing it. And it's like, that's only because you're focusing on that. Like, you are seeing it so much more than everyone else. And I think it's encouraging for people to like see this happen, where I thought you were the only person doing this. And like, maybe you don't realize how many people are also doing calligraphy like I am. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And like that being said, I think that, for anyone that's thinking what you're saying, which is, oh, so many people are doing it, it's a saturated market, why start? Like, it's not really about that. It's more about like, how can you make it personal to you, and how can you build a unique brand based off of this skill? And like, I really get what you're saying. And when I started, actually, there was about 3 others doing what I'm doing, and not even the style of work. Like some was more like this like guy that would do funny characters and like different scenes in the world, and another was like doing kind of like more design work. So, now there's a lot of people. I think my work has become very saturated on the internet. There are a lot of people like mimicking my work, and it's, I see even brand advertising with like my exact art on it. Like I just saw a commercial. I'm not going to name the name because they know who they are, but like they've completely copied my intellectual property for their advertising, and it's just very funny. That you think that I might be unique, but I'm just seeing my work everywhere now. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's sort of a blessing and a curse because, like, obviously people connect with what you're doing and they want to use it and they see the value in it if they're copying it, but then they're copying it, which sucks.
Yeah.
I could talk about that kind of thing for a whole hour, but I also just want people to be able to see what you do. Like I said, my audience is probably not that familiar with what you do and probably doesn't see it all the time. And so, like, we're talking about it and telling people how cool it is, but they have to see it. So I think we should just jump into your lesson and then we can talk more after.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with this image, and the first thing I'm going to do is plan out where I will be placing the text. So I like to measure by doing this rectangle that I do with the little plus sign in the middle, and that's how I plan out where each word will be placed. I like to not be too precise about this because I really like the style of work that looks very like handwritten and spontaneous as opposed to very perfect and font-like. That's just a personal preference and style. So right now you can see how I planned out each box of where the words will go and the sizing, and you can see how I'm placing each word in the right box. So I'm writing happily ever crafter for obvious reasons. Then I like to zoom out of the screen and just plan, how that looks. Zooming in and out is something I do often, and it really just helps me get a better idea of how it's looking from, a bit more of a distance. So now I guess I notice some things I want to fix where I now am taking parts of the words and enlarging the happy ever after. I want that to be more of a focus when I am creating this. And I'm just like measuring the alignment to make sure it all looks right. Again, I'm zooming out and, trying out different angles just to be sure that I love how this looks. Here I am working on the crafter part as well. I want to make it a little bit more centered and aligned. I also love when text overlaps with the focus of the picture, which is Becca right now. So I like it sometimes for my words to go over or behind people just to make the image have more dimension and feel less flat. So now that I figured out where the words will be placed, I'm lowering the opacity, and now I'm going to go to my final text. So the idea is first do a sloppy illustration of the words and then lower the opacity and then perfect it. That's how I do most of my work. It's a lot of sketching, deciding what I like, and then going forward with the writing or final art. Again, I am going over Becca's head here, but I will be making it look like the letters will be behind her. Okay, now I'm zooming out, just making sure I like that. And after that, I will remove that sketch layer and start moving on now to the part where I'm going to make these words a little bit more three-dimensional. This is like the cleanup stage where I want to just make sure each word is, again, placed perfectly and the letters are nicely spaced. And this is a personal preference. I, advise everyone to do what feels right for them as far as their spacing goes. Again, my style is more spontaneous and handwritten. Other people like to make it a bit more perfect and exact. So here's the part where I'm going to quickly erase the bottom of the F to make it look like it's behind Becca's head. Now I'm going to go through this a bit fast just because what I'm doing now is just thickening my lines. I like to do this after I finish my art, and it just goes over every part and every letter to just give it more body and just fine tune my work. So that's what you see is happening here. A lot of it is just, going over and erasing at the same time. Now this next part is going to be how I implement my shadows. I have this very cartoony vibe about my work, so I love to add, shadows and give it more of a 3D vibe. As I make mistakes along the way, I just leave them and then clean them up at the end of each part of my work that I do. And so here you can see that I am deciding, where my light source is coming from, which is going to be from the right-hand side of my image. And I am following the shape of every letter, giving it more of like a curvy feeling. And that's basically what I'll be doing through each letter on this. And as you see, I like to zoom in and out. It helps me also gain perspective for the mistakes that I'm making or how I can be better at the work that I'm doing. So now I just zoomed out to make sure that I like everything that I'm doing. And the next part is adding gloss, which is kind of like my light. I do this based off of where I decided my light source is coming from. So I decided that my light source is coming from the right. So therefore, I'm going to put it in the opposite placement from where my shadows are. And I like to do this very quick and, not overthink it too much. Just slide my pen throughout different parts of the letters just to give it more of a three-dimensional effect. So when I'm going to be done with the gloss, and I'll zoom out, you can see how much more dimension it has added to the image. With the shadow and the gloss, it really makes it pop and gives it that animated appeal that I love in my work. So now that I finished with the text, the next stage is I want to create a fun wallpaper that will kind of emphasize the entire image. I really like to do these kind of hand doodled illustrations. And I know that Becca likes florals, so I thought it would be very fun to do this doodle of just handcrafted flowers all around the image. And yeah, sometimes, it's nice when you're doing this to keep rotating the canvas just to make sure that you can get all the petals to be around the same size. I like this to be very like freestyle and not try to control it too much, because I'm very much going for this like hand sketch appeal where it's not perfect, it's very spontaneous and fun. So now I'm just going to quickly fast forward through this since it's very repetitive. Also, another thing that I like to do is once I have a few of these designs to copy and paste them. It makes the process go a bit faster, but with this, I also wanted to make each flower individual. And so you can see I'm again zooming in and out just to make sure that I feel good about the overall composition for the entire illustration. I also want to make it feel like it's behind Becca so that it has some sort of dimension to make it feel like a wallpaper. The next thing that I want to do is just bring more attention to the text. So here I am just adding some emphasis lines. It's something I do often in my work where I, put little marks and emphasis lines around whatever it is that I'm creating and little dots to make it super fun. And then I'm going to add some shadows and highlights to these lines and illustrations just to make it feel more 3D. So this next part is very similar to the rest of the process where I'm going to be adding some highlights and shadows and giving it more depth. So it's very, very similar to the process before, and it's just, it gives the illustration more of a popping appeal. So lastly, I want to add some green dots. I want to incorporate this contrast of green and this like pinkish red, in addition to incorporating Becca's, green color from her logo. So that's another fun detail that I'd be adding just to make it look more festive. And now I'm done. So you can see the wallpaper design with the typography all together.
I mean, I feel like I am just going to have to print out your drawing and put it on the wall of my studio now.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
So, okay, I should have asked this before your lesson, but you are obviously using an iPad for this, right?
Yeah, for this one, I'm using an iPad.
Okay, so you kind of just answered my question. So do you use other things also, or is it always an iPad? Like what are your standard, what's in your toolbox, and like what apps and everything and all that kind of stuff?
So I'm actually not in my home right now. I'm in Tel Aviv. So I have a studio in Paris where I live, and I have a huge Wacom. I have an HP tablet, which I love, and my iPad. I took it for traveling, and then I got stuck here. So that's what I'm using now. But I have a Wacom, which I'm using Photoshop and Illustrator on. And and in general also I'm also using like sketchbooks, Copic markers, watercolors, acrylic, oils. I like to play around with different mediums, and I find a lot of inspiration for my work by not sticking to one thing. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so but like your standard style and the like drawing over an illustration or illustrating over a picture and all that stuff, the majority of it is done on which tablet?
On my Wacom, and it's done on Photoshop. Yeah, and like most, if not all, of my work for clients is on Photoshop because like I love my iPad so much, but I'm very limited on layers. Like for instance, if I need to make a billboard, I can't do it on my ProCreate, unfortunately. So I have to do it on Photoshop or Illustrator, and the file needs to be incredibly heavy, and the computer needs to be able to process something that heavy.
Interesting. Okay, well, I feel like I'm happy that I asked that question because I think that a lot of people might, pick up an iPad and try and make it look as crazy and cool and intense as yours and be like, I can't do this on an iPad, and realize that after trying forever. But I also think that it's really helpful that you showed how to do it on an iPad for this lesson for like people who are just starting out, because I know Photoshop can be really, really overwhelming.
Totally. And like ProCreate is so like user friendly and so good for beginners. Like it's so much easier to manage and maneuver through. So I really do recommend it.
Awesome. Okay, well, my next question is, I know in this lesson that you just did, drawing over me, it was pretty basic in terms of like the illustration of it. Like there wasn't crazy, like some of your designs are so intricate and so elaborate and cool and crazy. And so in terms of like, I know I have a lot of beginners watching who do more calligraphy than illustration and would be overwhelmed to think about how to do really intense illustrations like that, or even simple illustrations. Like I think a lot of people will look at this and be like, I could never do that because I can't draw. So what would your advice be for people who are stuck on that?
So people that are stuck on feeling like they are not capable because they don't have drawing skills.
Yeah.
So I would say that like start out small. I think it's very overwhelming when you look at someone that's doing like a masterpiece and then you're like, well, I can't even draw a donut. So I would say, start small and do small and easy things. Like I also, for you specifically, I did something that was more like lettering based because that is your style of work and I want to, match that. But in general, I would say, I do sometimes these like Hawaii characters, which are a lot more simplistic. So it could be like a taco, and it's not this elaborate design with folds and lighting and shadow and gradients. It's more like cute and simple. So I would say like look for more simplistic artwork and try to imitate that, and like slowly you can keep building on that. And my advice to anyone starting out is like don't jump too far. Like try to start at like a easier level and move your way up the ladder. And I think you'll find a lot more success that way because you have to develop your endurance and make mistakes and figure it out and, slowly. And so I started posting. I was telling you this, that I suck at recording myself at drawing, but I'm doing it anyways. I'm going to push through this. I started recording more of my like simple art. So like I'll do like a simple donut one day, or I'll do a simple like pasta, so that because I also get a lot of these beginners that want to learn how to draw, and I think that it's nice to just see how it's just simple shapes that you just turn into character designs.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think people just get overwhelmed. They see something really cool and they're like, oh, I'm creative. I could probably do that. And then when they put the pen to the iPad or paper or whatever, they're like, oh, I actually don't know how to draw.
I can't tell you how many times I'm drawing like, oh, that's so easy. Like literally my fiance's friends are like, yeah, like anyone can draw that. I'm like, okay, so do it. And then they're like, wait, I can't draw a straight line. This is so hard.
Yeah. So actually, for anybody who's watching, I want to also mention I did a lesson a while back with, we were doing sketchnoting, and she talked us through how to do like really simple doodles just with shapes like triangle, square, circle, that basically anything you want to draw can be broken down into those shapes, which I thought was really cool. And it's one of my most popular episodes ever, actually, because it really helps people get past that fear of like just starting. So I'll link to it up above for anybody who wants to kind of explore that kind of thing. But I think that's really good advice to just like start small and then gradually work your way up. And I feel like as you do that too, you just gradually learn what you do and don't like drawing, and you naturally find your own style too. And you won't ever get there if you're just trying to like copy someone else's big elaborate things without trying the beginner stuff first.
Absolutely. Like, how many times, I don't know if you ever go through this where you're like, I love this person's art, I want to do this too, and you do it for like a day, like it's not my style, like no thanks, that's like, it's so true. Like you should, explore other styles of art, but like at the end of the day, like your style is always innate within you. And
yeah, exactly. And like I could look at yours and I would love to be able to do exactly what you do, but if I tried to, it just wouldn't sit right, like even if I tried to copy it perfectly, it would never look like yours. And there's no point in trying to do that. Like just try and use your own, develop your own style over time. It's the same with lettering and calligraphy. I'm always telling people that.
Yeah, like same goes to you. Like I love lettering, but it's not where my heart is, like I'll do it, but it's like I won't be able to letter all day long every day, as much as I love it. So it's very true.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe like we should just be a power duo and I'll do the lettering and you do the illustrating, and then we can take over the world.
I'm up for it.
Well, Donna, thank you so much for coming on. It was really, really nice to meet you. And I know people will love that lesson, and I'm sure they will be trying it, including myself. So where can people find more from you? Where can people tag you if they want to show you their creations and all that stuff?
So you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Donna, Donna _Adi, ADI. And also YouTube, same thing. It's at youtube.com/Donna Adi, Donna Adi. And I, just started posting on there and loving it as well. And yeah, I started a TikTok too. I don't know if you're doing that, but I'm conforming. So it's happening.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's an interesting world.
It's an interesting world, but it's just like, I know that when we started our Instagrams, it was the same thing. We're like, this is so foreign to us, and then now it's like it's our business and our everything. So
exactly.
Conform.
Yeah, and TikTok is full of the next generation, which is a challenge in itself to be, interacting with, but someday it's important.
Totally agree with you.
Okay, well, thanks again so much, Donna, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you too. Bye.